All right, folks, we're going to start working on the playfield. As you can see, it's pretty dirty and it's missing a little bit of paint. So we're going to try to make this thing look much better. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be mint, but it'll be better than this. So we've got wear up here. We've got a little bit of wear there. Got wear here around the saucer. Got a little bit of wear there around the saucer. Got some wear around this lettering, and you can see some of this is coming off, I think. We'll see how much of this survives. Wear there, wear here. Really bad wear in the middle. A little bit of wear here. A little bit of wear there. So this is what we're starting with. So first thing we're going to do is clean off some of this dirt. This is how it ended up after the initial cleaning. Basically, we're just getting the dirt off of it. And we noticed, look at this, there is actually white paint overspray all over the bottom half of it. I thought that was like this stuff that's part of the art. Nope. That's overspray from something. So we're going to try to take that off with a magic eraser and clean it up a little bit more. So we're going to start in on that, and we'll see if we can get that better. Whenever you're using a magic eraser, you got to be careful around edges where the paint's already lifting, because you'll just take it all up if you're not careful. So we're going to try not to get too aggressive, but we got to get all of that overspray off, or most of it off. So that's next. You can see how the magic eraser is doing a pretty good job. Those white dots there are the original art. You can see how the overspray is there, but it's not here where I cleaned it on that Mylar half circle. And over here you can kind of see all this stuff looks horrible, but it'll clean up good. And we're going to repaint some of that. You can kind of see here the difference. So that's the overspray, and then that's after it's been cleaned off. So we'll keep at it. Okay, so this is what we came up with after our initial cleaning. Just initial, folks. This isn't final. Which we did with a magic eraser and alcohol. So it cleaned up pretty good. Obviously there are major issues right here. So we're going to try to repaint a bunch of this stuff, because it's a Star Trek. You got to get it looking better than that. Most people would throw, make no doubt about it, most people would throw this playfield in the trash. Absolutely. But we're going to try to save it. Shouldn't say try. We're definitely going to save it. But you can see all the problem areas where it has wear. So we shall see what we can do. So the first thing I'm going to do, we have an overlay that goes over this part. I'm going to pull that out and see how good of a fit that is, and then see how much I need to paint around it. I know I need to repaint all the blue, and we'll have to get together a plan of what we're going to repaint first. So maybe the green first. I don't know. Got a big task ahead of us here. We'll see what we can do. Okay, so we went and inked in a bunch of stuff. I inked in a lot of the inserts with a black acrylic paint marker, not to be confused with a Sharpie. If you use acrylic paint, you can clear coat over it and it won't bleed or anything. If you use a Sharpie, sometimes it'll bleed after you're done. So we inked in a lot of the stuff that was missing just so we could kind of tell. And the way we did it was I just took a picture online of how it's supposed to look and just freehanded back in what was missing. So it's not perfect, but it'll do, especially after we get all the paint and everything on it. The hardest part, I think, is going to be getting the lettering right, but luckily it looks like a 5-year-old drew it, so I might be able to match that. And then there was a little bit missing here, so what I did after that was I started mixing paint. So I took some of this citron green, and I took some of this Kelly green, and I mixed the two together. Then I got this, which looks a little bright, so I put a little tiny bit of it on one spot, and I don't know how well the camera will show it, but it's a little too vivid, and it's slightly too dark. So I'm going to try to put like to get it. It looks like the green that's on the playfield is a little more yellow. So I'm going to add in some kind of like a dirty yellow to kind of make it more yellow, and at the same time make it kind of more faded looking. So we'll see if that works. But I've got to put it there, and I've got a little bit of green trim here, like that explosion looking thing. And then I've got some of these little inserts that are green. And I've got a little bit of lining up here that's green. So not too much green, so I did it first. So we'll let this green dry, and then I'll try mixing in a little yellow and see if it makes it a little more like it. Okay, so I have mixed up an unholy concoction of lots of yellows and different greens and even a few browns, and I put like 1 drop of red to make it less vivid. So basically, if the color's too intense, if you put the opposite color on the color wheel on it, it will knock some of that off. So this top one right there is my latest. So I'm going to let that dry a little bit and see if we're close enough. This one you can tell. So if you're looking at these, the way you can kind of figure it out is, okay, so what is green? Green is yellow and blue, right? You get taught that in like kindergarten. So this color is a combination of yellow and blue. So is this color that I painted on compared to the original color, is it more green, more yellow than that color, or more blue than that color? It's slightly darker and it's a little bit more blue, right? So the way you would get it more like how you want it is to add more yellow. And since it's a little dull, to make it a little bit more intense like the green is, you would want to put yellow, and you would want to put like a real bright yellow. So I'm not perfect at this stuff, but the more you mess around with it, you kind of learn how to do it. So I put like a really bright yellow in it. And another thing is, if you're trying to lighten a color, you kind of need a lot of paint. So I've already poured this out 2 or 3 times, about half of it. So I pour about half out, then mix some more, wasn't quite right. Pour about half out again, mix some more, wasn't quite right. So you just have to kind of work through it a lot. And keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. And luckily acrylic paint dries pretty quick. So you just keep messing with it until you think you've got it right, and then go ahead and paint in all of the green. And then you work on your next color. So you don't have to get it perfect. You just want it to look where it hides it a little bit. So of course the most important color will be the blue, but we'll get the green right, and then we'll move on. So I'll keep messing with it. If that ends up being proper, the right color, then I'll go ahead and paint in all the green and we'll take a video. But if it's not, we'll mix it a little more. Okay, so the green ended up being pretty good, so we went ahead and added in all the green that was missing. And of course all this will get relined with black ink and clear coated. So we had some green spots over there, some green spots over there, and of course this middle part here was the worst. Added it back in, or I guess this earth was the worst. It's not a perfect match, but it's pretty close, so we're happy with it. More of these. A little bit of the line was missing on this. These over here. So we are actually done with the green. So now we're trying to get this yellow right, which is probably going to be the toughest part. Yellow is tough. Yellow and red are kind of hard because they it's just, I think your eye picks up different colors better. So like yellow, if it's off a little bit, it's obvious. So we're never going to get this where it looks exactly the same. Now, if you had the time and were patient enough, you could repaint the whole thing and then you wouldn't really notice. Or you could put the overlay on it that we've got, which we may end up still doing. If this looks like crap after I'm done with it, we'll put that overlay on it. But if I can get it looking pretty good, I think it would be better to have the original wood than have the overlay. So we're going to try that. So the first thing I did was I got one of our yellow colors and I dabbed a little bit on here. So you can see how your main problem that you have whenever you're trying to do yellow is that it's just too clean looking. So anything that's, you know, that might be a decent match for this where you don't have much wear, but anything that gets a lot of wear, you can see it real good down here. Basically the ball can't touch this area because that bar is in the way. So this part here has never had the ball touch it, and you can see the wear around it, and you can see the difference between that yellow and that. Well, that's how it's going to look whenever I paint it. You know, the part that I painted is going to be clean like that, and the part next to it's going to be like that. So it's going to be hard to kind of get a happy medium. So basically there are little tiny swirls in the paint. Hopefully that'll show pretty good. There are little tiny cracks in the paint that the ball has done. Yeah, that shows it good there. So there's little tiny cracks, and there's dirt embedded in those cracks. So whenever you use a magic eraser, the reason it cleans it up so well is because magic eraser has little tiny particles that get way down inside those cracks and clean it up. So they didn't get it perfect, but it was a lot worse, as you saw at the beginning of the video. So the yellow is no longer really yellow, because whenever you're like 2 feet away, as you're standing here playing it, you don't see all those little cracks. You just see that there's something a little darker mixed in with the yellow, and your eye doesn't really define it. And so the yellow is like a it's got like a brown haze over it. So we're going to take yellow and kind of make it a little darker and just try to get it to match that faded yellow, which is, it's tough to do. But as you can see, it's not even close right out of the can, or right out of the bottle. We've got a bunch of different yellows. None of them are really close. That one was the closest. So we're going to add like just a, since it's too vivid, we're going to try to make it a little more dull. So again, you do the opposite color on the color wheel. So if you add just like a little tiny bit of purple, it'll knock it down a little bit to where it's a little more dull. So we're going to try that and see what that looks like. And then if that doesn't do it, maybe we add a little more, or we add a little, maybe like a little brown to make it look a little dingy, a little more dingy. So we're going to mess around with that a little bit and see how close we can get it. All right. So I took that yellow and I added one tiny drop of purple. Just one drop, folks. And it did knock it down a little bit. It made it a little more dull. Maybe a little bit too much, I don't know, but this is like, you know, ball playing position, right? So you're going to be playing from about here, maybe a little higher, maybe about like this. So you saw how it was before. Basically, I kind of feathered the yellow in, starting about here and going up. And then I took a black acrylic paint pen and touched up the places where the some of the lettering was gone. And then once I got to here, like pretty much all the lettering was gone, and that one was completely gone. So what do you think? Is it a pretty good match, yellow wise? And then the other bad spot, of course, was up here. So playing position, you're going to be about right here. My whole point being, you're not real close to it, you know, so a lot of people would never even know, you know? A lot of people wouldn't even be able to tell. Now, if you get close to it, you can tell. Obviously, all this was gone, or most of that was gone. But not bad, right? I'm an amateur, folks. For an amateur, that's about as good as it gets. So if you get real close, you can see that everything is not as it seems. Get some white on it where you can see it a little better. So you can see that it, of course, has all been touched up. And by the time you get down to here, most of the paint's the original. I don't know, pretty close match, really. I think. The rule that I always go by is, make it, if you can't make it the exact color where you cannot even discern a difference, make it slightly darker. If it's a little bit too light, you'll see it. But if it's a little bit too dark, it just looks kind of worn, you know, it looks natural. This machine's 40 years old, you know, so it doesn't have to look brand new. And the other mistake I think a lot of people make is they try to make it look brand new, which is very hard to do. I mean, the thing, everything on this is faded, so you're not going to really get it perfect, but I'm pretty happy with that. So I think that's better than, well, you guys leave your comments below. What do you think? Is that better, repainting it like that where it's obviously been repainted, people can obviously tell? Is it better to have it like that? And I'm going to do the blue still, of course, here in a few minutes. Is it better to have it like that, or would it be better to put the overlay on it? I don't know, man. I think it looks better painted in. Just my opinion. But yeah, we're going to keep working the other ones, and then we're going to clear coat it too, so it won't ever wear again. It'll be permanent. But what that also means, whenever we clear coat it, is that all these ball swirls will be permanent. There won't be any fixing that. But if we don't do something about it, it'll get worse and worse and worse. So we got to stop the madness now. And like I said at the beginning of the video, a lot of people that are like real collectors, they would have thrown this thing away. They wouldn't have fixed this. There's no way they would have little acrylic craft paints out repainting major areas of a playfield. I think a lot of people would have trashed it. But we're not going to. We're going to save it. Damn it. Yeah, I said it. Go ahead and report me to YouTube. I don't care. I said it. We're going to save it, damn it. So next up, I think what I'll do is, I think I'll do the other kind of hard thing, this kind of cream color. So this originally was what passed for white, but over the years it's faded, 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 faded. So now it's more of like a creamish, almost like a light brown. So I think maybe I'll do that next. And then I'll do some red. I think I'm going to kind of save, well, wait a minute. I'm not going to do that next because I kind of need the cream to do these little stars. So when I repaint this blue, I'm going to have to put a few of these little dots on it to make it kind of blend in, which will be the same color as that. So let's not do that yet. Maybe I'll do a little red work. Up here there's a little bit of red that's worn. So we'll do a little bit of red, and maybe we'll do a little bit of orange, right? Red and orange, red and orange. And then after we do that, we won't have anything really left except the blue and the cream. So maybe we do red and orange next. So I'll see what I can come up with here. But I think we're doing pretty good. Not bad. It's coming along nicely. All right, so I did the red and the orange, and so I did it just like the other ones. Mix, 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 mix. It's not a perfect match. This was the worst spot for the red. You can kind of see that it's a little off, but not too bad. There was some more in through here, of course. There was various things up and through here. I added a little bit here. There was a little bit here. And then, you know, this was all kind of messed up. I got that back right, or close enough to right. And then over here, you could tell a little bit. And then we did the orange. And so the orange was just in a few spots. And I had one right out of the bottle that was already about as close as I could get it. So this is the worst spot right there. Then there's a little bit there. And of course, the spots here that we're missing it. This is the worst part of the playfield so far. I don't have it quite perfect, but it's kind of busy there, so hopefully it'll blend in a little bit. So we have arrived at the great moment that we're going to do the blue. So I'll show you a little more of that just so that you can see it as it goes down. You can feel like you're part of the process. Okay, folks, so we are beginning the blue, the great blue paint debacle of 2018. So we've got some heavy wear up here, so this is a good place to do a test because it's way up at the top of the playfield. So I put a little bit of, what are they calling this? Calypso blue, just right out of the bottle, right? Poured out a little bit of Calypso blue and put it on it. So this is an interesting one here. So you got to think about the color wheel and all that kind of stuff. So the blue, the hue is kind of the same, you know, right? But it's a little too light and it's a little too vivid, like we were talking about earlier. So on the color wheel, so the way you knock it down to make it not as vivid is you put the opposite color on the color wheel. So on the color wheel, the opposite color of blue is yellow, which kind of makes sense because that's the way this whole thing is faded. It's faded yellow. So this was originally white, but now it's yellow, right? So this originally probably was a pretty close match to the original color on the playfield before it faded. So that is actually probably a little bit closer to this, right? You see it's a little less faded under the Mylar. But basically everything on the playfield has like a yellow cast over it. I don't know how much that'll show up on the camera, but so I'm going to try, and I need to go darker with it. So I'm going to try to put just a drop of like a darker, well, I don't know if I have a dark yellow, but like a kind of oranger yellow, you know. So I'm going to try something like that and put just a drop in it in my mix and then try it next to it and see if it's a little better. So we'll do that and come back. Alright, so there is our blue that we were doing, and then next to it you can see we put in some brown, which is, you know, kind of like dark yellow, right? So we put that in and it worked, but brown is kind of green, you know, so it took it a little bit too green. So you can see that's a little more green than the background, and it's still a little light too. So what I'm going to try is I'm going to try putting some dark blue in it just a little bit to try to pull it back blue and make it a little darker. So we'll try that next. Alright, so this is where we are right now. I'm thinking we're getting there, but it's still a little off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of like dark green in it, because it needs to be a little more green and it still needs to be darker. Darker, darker, darker. Okay people, so we're getting closer. You can see that's what we're painting, and it pretty much matches this. It's very close to the unfaded part underneath this Mylar, but it still doesn't match the faded part. So we're going to go a little more with it. Same thing up here. This is the same color. Very close, but not quite close enough. I want to go a little darker with it to get it a little bit more like the faded parts. I think what I'm going to do is try a little bit more of the brown. Alright folks, I think we've got a pretty good match here. It's a little bit too green, but I don't think you're going to see it once we get the stipples on it. And in person I can't even see it. I can see it a little bit on the camera, but I think it actually looks a little bit too blue in person, so I don't know. I'm thinking maybe we split the difference, but it seems to be blending in pretty good, so I am going to go with it. And this one down here was too blue, so we will I'll paint in a bunch of the blue and then we'll see how it looks. Alright, so we're putting some of it in here. Thought maybe you might want to see some of it actually go on, especially in that really bad area. Now we got to go back and touch it all up. Now this is the part right here where I was testing it earlier, so it's a little bit too light. So I'm trying to put on lighter coats than I usually do, because I keep having the problem where I put the coat on too thick, and then you can see not brush strokes, but you can see like texture because the paint's actually piled up. It's not perfectly flat. I'm trying to get better the older we get. This isn't going to look perfect, but I think it's going to look a heck of a lot better than major areas of the playfield missing. And also we're going to go back in and with the black and redo a lot of the lines, make them thicker, and of course we got to redo around a lot of the inserts and stuff. We're kind of trying to feather it in a little bit in the, like, you don't want to paint all this and leave that one little spot, because then it, you know, since it's going to be slightly different, you would notice it. So like a line like that around that insert would get redone. Normally when we're doing this we'd have music going in the background, but if I do that, YouTube gets very upset if you're playing music in the background. So we don't want to upset anybody. I don't want to get sued by Katy Perry or anything. So we don't put any music on our videos. So I'm going to finish that up, and then we'll let it start drying and see if it evens out and looks pretty good. Okay, so this is how it all dried. It kind of looks on the camera how it looks in person right now. Earlier when I was filming it, the camera, it looked real green, but in person it's blue. So I don't know. I gotta go with what my eyes see, people. But I think it looks pretty good. Now, of course, when we add the star field back in, that'll cover up a bunch of it too and blend it in a little bit. If we get that color yellow enough. It needs to be that yellow, right? Touched up around these. All this was touched up. There was a bunch of like little spots here and there around the ship and things. And of course the big ugly spots there. The big spot up here, there was some there, a couple little spots here, So there are actually two colors left. There is the cream, that'll be all of the little stars and some of the ship and a lot of this part of the ship. And then there's also this light blue. That's just some of the shadows on the ship and in a couple other places. This, of course, is also the cream color. So we're getting there. We're down to two colors, people, and a lot of black ink. So I think that's it for today. Tomorrow we'll come back and do the cream. But guess what? Through the magic of YouTube, you won't have to wait till tomorrow. That will happen right now. Okay, folks, so we're starting in on the cream colored, yellow colored kind of thingy. So you can see how it's pretty close, but if you look over here in the middle of the playfield, it's not as close. It's a little too bright. So I'm trying to mute it a little bit, and I think what I've got going on is the cream is actually kind of a yellow, and it's, I think, not quite green enough. Like it needs a little more green in it to go from there to there. So I'm adding like a little bit of a darker green, a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time, trying to green it up a little bit. So I'm going to keep going that way and see if we get a little closer on that middle part. Okay, so I've been mixing, and I added a little bit of green, which did make it match a little bit better, but then it was a little bit too vivid, like I keep running into because all of this is faded. So what I did was, I did the same trick I did earlier. I added a little bit of purple, which is the opposite color of like yellow. So I added a little bit of purple, and it made it just like one drop of purple, and it made it just a little more dull and made it kind of match. So I repainted in some of this stuff, and I repainted in some of this stuff, and it's a pretty good match. I think we're looking pretty good on it. I repainted that, and again I have to go back and re-ink all of the black. I also kind of feathered in some of the stuff that was missing in here, but I have to re-ink the lettering over it now. So the worst place for all of that was right through here, you know. Obviously there was a lot of wear there. So the other thing that this is used for is all of the little stars. So if you look at how they did that, it's just kind of a random assortment of different sizes, and they're kind of all over everything. Like if you look, they're everywhere. So you can see where I painted there, but it doesn't have the stars, so you can kind of see it because it's the only area that doesn't have any stars. Same thing with up there. So to make those little tiny dots, what I've been doing is I have this little wire. You could use like a safety pin, maybe something like that. And so I am just dipping it in the paint. Whoop. Getting a healthy little bit on there, and then we'll just make it happen. And as the paint starts to go off, the stars get kind of smaller. So I'm just kind of stippling them in like that, and I'm just going to keep adding them. You can see I did a few over here. I'm just going to keep adding it and adding it and adding it until it blends in enough that your eye won't catch most of it. And then what I have left is I need to re-ink a lot of the black lines, and I need to still do this light blue color. You can see I did kind of the middle part of the cream, but didn't do the outside parts because they were still fine. So I tried to kind of stop where there was a line somewhere so that maybe your eye wouldn't notice that it's a slightly different color. So I'm going to do a whole bunch of, I got about 500 more dots to do. And after I do that, I'll show it to you, and then we'll figure out the blue. Okay folks, so here's what we came up with after we added in the stars and stuff. This one was completely gone, so I had to completely repaint that one. And this one up here I made too. And then of course we added in all the little stipples everywhere. I think it helped a lot to blend it in. It's not perfect, but at first glance you might not tell. So for instance, this is original, right? But all that I added in. And that's original, but all that was added. So whenever you do it, one of the things you have to do if you end up having to do something like this is you're trying to make it look completely random. So you have to run some of them right up to your other art, right on the edge of it, like it goes behind it. If you keep stopping right before you get to it, it'll look like there'll be like a halo effect around it, and it won't blend in. So I think that worked out pretty good. And then there was a bunch around there, and then that big spot up here. What do you think? I think it looks pretty good. I am happy with it. So we have two things left to do. I've got to do this light blue because some of it's missing on the ship there, you can see, and some of it's missing on the photon or whatever that is that's shooting that part, because they're using it as like shadowing. So it goes like this, continues to go up around, and then this side is almost all like that. So it's kind of like a shadow on it. So I need to mix that, and I think that's the only place on the playfield that it's really used. There's a little tiny bit of it right there, but it's just used as a shadow on the objects that are white. None of that's missing though. But so I just need it through the shadow around the ship, the Enterprise, and around this little 100-point saucer. And I think that'll be it for the color. And then after I get done with that, I need to go back in and make all of my lines look a little bit better, all my black lines. And when I do that, I will finish up the thousands like up there and things like that. So I will get to mixing on that light blue. Okay folks, so we painted in the blue, and the light blue, and we re-inked some of the lines, and then we sprayed some clear coat on it, and it came out pretty good. Now you'll notice where we repainted does look a little more green than the blue, so the camera wasn't lying whenever it was showing me that before. But other than that, it looks pretty good. So this area up here was pretty worn. It's not perfect. We had to redo some of the lettering. I never had great handwriting, much less paintbrush handwriting. And then this part came out pretty good. It's not perfect. You can tell if you're really looking for it. But once all the plastics and everything are on, I think it'll look pretty good. And then of course this was the most dramatic area where major parts were gone. Came out pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. We think it'll pass. Once we get it all lit up and all the plastics on and everything, I think it'll look great. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Now we will do one more video of us putting everything back on the playfield and repairing the bottom of the playfield, testing it all out, getting the game ready to go. On the clear coat, the way we do it, you can do it different ways. The way we do it is we literally have just clear coat in a spray paint can and just spray it on. That is not the best way to do it, but we don't really have the time to do it the best way to do it. So the best way to do it would be to take everything off the playfield, underneath the playfield and everything, to even take the rails off, take all the switches off, take all the light sockets out. You could probably do it with the light sockets in, but and then go take it to like a someone who can paint it with automotive clear coat. But let's be realistic here, people. We've just touched up by hand paint all over the playfield. This is not like a collector's quality machine anymore. It didn't even have that potential with all of that wear on it. So this is just us doing what we can to save a machine that had major wear on it. So we touched up the paint, we cleaned it up the best we could, and then we sprayed clear on it so that it won't flake off anymore. So this is something that an amateur can do. Obviously, we're amateurs at this kind of thing. This is something that an amateur can do if you run across a machine that needs some work. We're not really advocates of getting the thing perfect, because you're just going to play it, you know. As long as it looks pretty good, we're happy with it. Now, if you've got one that's in really nice original shape, yeah, do whatever you can to keep it in original shape. Keep it a collector's quality machine. But this is a player's machine, you know. We were able to fix up the worn paint, and I think a lot of people would probably be proud to have this in their game room. So that is that. Now, if you like all the trouble we went through to film this video, give us a thumbs up and leave your comments below. Let us know what you think about it. If you think it's decent, if you think it's horrible, if you it reminds me of a funny joke. If you think we should have burned it, or if you think we saved another one, leave your comments below. You can stop by and see us too if you want. We're in downtown Rock Hill, South Carolina. We're about 15 miles south of Charlotte, North Carolina. And you can always check out the games that we have for sale on our website. Go to lionsarcade.com and check it out. But leave your comments below. Tell us what you think about what went down here. Maybe post up some links if you've got stuff you've repainted. And we will see you on the next video. Hope you enjoyed it.